Hey y'all, a lot of people have been asking me for this update. This is going to be a little awkward because my tripod is buried somewhere in the van and I can't find it, and I don't really feel like digging for it right now. I just got back from a long day out on the ice, so I'm just going to hold my phone in the air and talk to the camera. I'm going to get straight to the point here. A lot of people are going to frame this as gatekeeping somehow winning, or me somehow caving to the gatekeepers. And I want to put a stop to that narrative right away. Not only because it's not what happened, but also I feel like both sides of the coin could use a little bit of empathy for each other. And I feel like I'm going to talk about that a little later. But first, the thing that you all want to know, you may have noticed that the map has undergone some changes. At the suggestion of some locals, I did reach out to Stowe Mountain Rescue and I asked them for comment on whether or not they thought that a resource like this would A, help people be more knowledgeable about the terrain and therefore contribute to less rescues, or B, attract more people to the terrain and contribute to more rescues. And I went into this having the mentality that essentially, switching hands here, essentially more information is always better than less, because people will follow tracks, people will go out there and try, regardless of whether or not they know the hazards, and they'll get themselves in trouble. And it seemed like a couple of the rescues and the fatality, I think in 2020, stemmed from people not knowing where they were going and getting themselves into situations. Stowe Mountain Rescue's chief, John, reached out to me and he asked me very directly to remove any references to hazardous terrain out in the notch. He looked over my map and he liked what I was doing with trying to preserve the history and the heyday of the Friends of the Devil Trail crew and people out there cutting these stashes and the history and the stories behind them. But he strongly encouraged me that any of the terrain out in the notch or on the chin that posed serious hazard to the skier, whether that be getting cliffed out, whether that be avalanche terrain, whether that be really complex route finding where you could get yourself lost and end up in a bad area, that I should remove all of those from my map, because the people who know how to get to those places, they will find it on their own without my help. And the people who are going to find those places with my help are probably the people who shouldn't be there. And that a thing like this is more likely to lead to rescues than to prevent rescues. And I immediately opened up my map and deleted 99% of that terrain that falls under that umbrella. And that's fair. These are the people who are pillars in the community and who pick up the pieces when things go wrong. And I feel like I need to respect that, and that all of you should too. I mean, really, without Stowe Mountain Rescue, a lot of people would be screwed if they got lost in the notch and needed to get out. And I don't want to do something that's disrespectful and blatantly goes against the advice of the people who are experts on what causes rescues and how they needed to be responded to. So where does that leave us now? The map is a bit of a shell of its former state. All of the regularly trafficked, regularly tracked out, less hazardous terrain is still on there, the stuff that's inbounds. I responded with my email explaining some things that I left, and I'll explain them here too. I left a couple things in the notch, Outer Planets and Hellbrook, and this is mostly because I think people will follow tracks out there anyway, and I'd rather have people have that information, because, you know, places like Ultimate Shoot don't always have a track. It's unlikely somebody's going to get out there unless somebody shows them how to get out there. But, you know, Hellbrook, and especially the Outer Planets, people are going to follow the really well-defined traverses from the high amounts of traffic that already go there. And especially in Outer Planets, where there's already a traverse to more popular places like Angel Food, people are going to just keep traversing to find better lines. But anyone who knows the terrain can tell you that once you pass Angel Food and the very beginning of the Outer Planets, you start to get into avalanche terrain. So I worry that people who are going to go out there anyway, because there's always a tracked out, well-defined traverse to get you there, will end up skiing into avalanche terrain, maybe not knowing that it's there, and potentially not carrying a beacon. Probably not even potentially. I think a lot of the average skiers at Stowe don't carry beacons. I do. If you're going to go into the backcountry there, I recommend having avalanche equipment. But I left those, and I feel like those are important. And I also left Hourglass, Profanity, and Northridge, because those are really commonly skied, and I feel like on the times that I've been on the hike, I've seen a lot of people who have just followed the boot tracks to get up there. And I also don't think that people respect that those are avalanche terrain too, especially Hourglass. That could really put you in a bad spot if it slid, because of how much of a funnel feature it is and how it exits out to just trees. It's a huge terrain trap. But essentially that's the state of the map. And I want to address one more thing on the subject of the map before I stop covering this topic forever. And that's that during this process, I spoke to a lot of people on both sides. And in some ways, I was kind of set up to fail here from the beginning and was not equipped to have the influence that I did over this situation. But like I said in the previous video, the resource that I built for the presidentials was really well received. And I had a lot of people in my ear, and I mean hundreds of people, hyping me up to release this map. And as somebody who is in the terrain a lot, enough to have made both of these maps with what I know from personal experience alone, I am certainly one of the frequenters of this terrain, but I would hardly characterize myself as being in the in crowd. I didn't grow up here. I can live here because I live in a mobile home, essentially, with my van. And I spend a lot of time there, but I'm not connected to the local community of Mount Mansfield. And so I didn't really hear a lot of voices initially from that crowd. I also, as somebody who had to find all these spots on my own, kind of felt like I spoke for the outsiders in a way, and wanted to prevent them from having to go through some of the trials and tribulations that I went through in finding these zones. And I had a lot of people in my ear telling me that was a great idea. And when I put it out and it ended up being as much of a firestorm as it was, I got to hear a lot of local voices in the Mount Mansfield community for the first time. And I want to say that I think we all need to be a little kinder to each other and have a little bit more understanding. Because as somebody who wasn't shown the way, I also shared the opinion that many of you have, that the people who are the supposed gatekeepers of this terrain are just selfish people who want it all to themselves. And I've come to learn that that's really false. I see these people as people who really love this mountain and care about the terrain, care about the health of the community and issues such as overcrowding and rescues and the safety of others. And as much as they would like to maintain their stashes, they don't want to see people get hurt. They also gave me some points that I think are important too, is that they want to preserve the adventure of it all. In some ways, it's special to be shown these places for the first time. I've had the pleasure of showing some of my friends these zones and seeing the smiles on their faces when they shred this terrain for the first time and see how magical it is. It just really warms my heart. It's like one of the most wholesome things to see, to just see somebody eyes wide, mouth just wide open smile, disbelief that this is something that's in the Northeast. And I think in a way I thought I could offer that to the most amount of people if I made this map. But in connecting with some of the locals, I feel like maybe I might have cheapened it. I might have taken away the magic of finding or being shown one of these places for the first time. And I don't want these places to be less magical. Through this process, I learned to have a perspective that I didn't hold before this event. I gained perspective through this, and I feel like I have a lot more understanding and empathy towards the people who I perceived as the gatekeepers. And from now on, we'll call them the locals, not the gatekeepers. I feel like that term has a lot of sting behind it. And I encourage all of you who don't necessarily feel welcome in the community to, understand where they're coming from and have a little bit of empathy for them. And to all the locals, I hope that you all can have some empathy towards the people who you perceive as the outsiders. I think it's easy to see plates from other states, people who don't necessarily have your skill level, coming to these mountains and see them as a threat to the place you love and everything you knew, and that they're going to drag issues with them. And I want to encourage you to see them as people too, and not just numbers that you wish weren't there. I've heard the voices of so many people who feel like outsiders and want access to this information, but maybe feel scared to venture out and would like to have more resources so they don't feel like they're going in blind. I've had parents who just want to know where their kids are going, and they don't necessarily even know what their kids mean when they're like, oh yeah, we're gonna go shred angel food. I've had a lot of people give me really valid reasons for why this should be a thing, and feel really disconnected from and shut out by the insider local community. And I hope that you can see them as people who were once like you when you were in your early stages of skiing and just love to ski, love the mountain, want to learn the mountain, and don't necessarily have the access to it that they would like. And while, as we've all kind of learned through this process, maybe that's for good reason. Maybe sometimes you're protected by what you don't know. I feel like being able to see them as people too who love what you love is really important. So I hope as I leave this off here, that the people who I've upset with this can forgive me. I feel like I've learned and know better now. And I feel like we can all learn from this and come together and have a little bit more respect and a little bit more love for each other. Because at the end of the day, we're all just here because we enjoy the mountains and sliding through them, especially when they're full of powder. Thank you all for listening. If you made it this far, I really appreciate it. Leave your thoughts in the comments, and I'll try and respond to anything that feels constructive or complimentary to this discussion.